Hi, everyone. Hello. Welcome to the live Q&A for October. Happy fall to everyone. I don't think I could say that at the last one, right? I think fall officially happened after our last live Q&A. So hopefully we'll get some people on the live Q&A today, but if not, I'll be chatting for a while on some very cool topics related to the psychology of injury. I actually just got back from a conference in Toronto, lovely city if you've never been. And it's this Association for Applied Sports Psychology. So it's a conference that I try and go to every year, most years anyway, when I have the opportunity. And this year I was presenting. It wasn't on injury, but I did get to go to some other workshops on topics related to injury and talk to a lot of people about man, there are just so many people out there that are really excited about this idea of diving into, more specifically, into psychological rehab from injury and really understanding how important that aspect is and not just focusing on the physical aspects, right? So it's really easy because it has something to do with your body. Hi, Cindy, I just saw you join. So it's just natural for us to, for a long time, people were only focused on the physical aspects of recovering from injury. And I think, maybe the assumption was like, well, once your body's healed, you're ready to go. Let's get back in there. And it doesn't always work that way. So, with more and more research and just, talking to, and now like athletes allowing themselves to talk about the challenges, we're realizing what an important aspect it is, the psychological recovery as well, and kind of getting your confidence back up and getting your brain healed as your body's healing, so to speak. So, it's exciting to get to be around other professionals in the field and upcoming professionals in the field. So after I'm here with you guys, I get to teach a class to graduate students in sports psychology. And man, there's a lot of energy around this topic in particular. So I think we're going to see just see a lot of, we're going to see a big push, I feel like, in this topic in particular, and see hopefully some more energy around it. I was talking to a few, people at the conference, and just that there's still a disconnect there. So we're very excited that you're all here and that we get to talk about this part of recovery with you guys. So, as people join, we'll definitely get to people's live questions, see what the biggest things on your mind right now. From now on, I'm going to try and send something out to you guys a little bit before, like a few days before, to let you know, like, here are the topics I'm going to talk about. I didn't get a chance to do that because I just got back from Toronto, but so that you have an idea of what the live Q&A is going to be about. We'll also send out a poll, kind of just like getting your feedback on things you would like to see, and just around the live Q&A and videos in general. And so we'll hopefully get some of that feedback from you guys as well. So I know some of you also can't make it live because of the timing, and we'll watch the recording. So, but it's been super fun. I didn't get to comment a lot, but it was really fun to see you guys, responding to the Winning Wednesday and the Friday feeling, and sharing that with each other. And boy, I can't tell you, I mean, I know I've heard it from some of you guys, but I hope you know how powerful it is, just you sharing, so that other people that are in the group that maybe don't comment all the time, but are going through whatever phase of injury recovery they're in, that they see that and can, sometimes it just feels good to be able to see that someone else is going through what you're going through, and sort of get the head, see, like, nodding your head, like, yeah, oh my gosh, I know exactly what you mean, and I love seeing you guys support each other too. So that was a big part of why Cindy and I wanted to create this group. So I had a few different ideas for today, but just based on some of the main topics from the conference and a conversation I had with one of my clients this morning, one of the things I wanted to talk about has to do with that internal dialogue and the thoughts that we have related to. So for this group specifically, related to recovering from injury, and that idea of focusing on what you want versus what you don't want. So often, as you're coming back to into physical activity again, whether it's your rehabilitation or you're coming back into higher levels of intensity of your training or your workouts, or actually coming back into competition. It will often get wrapped up in the what ifs, and the what ifs are sort of our potential fears of things that might happen. And so a lot of times our brain will naturally want to move towards, we think about the things that we don't want versus what we do want. And what I wanted to talk about is like, how do we flip the script, right? How can we flip that? Because when you talk about the things that you don't want, the motivation that's underneath that is based in fear, usually based in fear when you're talking about things that you don't want. Versus if you're talking about things that you do want, the motivation is based in desire instead. And it might feel like a subtle difference, but it's a very, very important difference. And I think we've talked about this a little bit before, but I wanted to really dive into this idea of how do you really embrace that and catch yourself in those moments, when to be able to recognize the moments when you are your motivation's being driven by fear versus desire. And then if you are in that place, how can you shift it? So I'm going to share a story, because I think this, sometimes when I talk about this topic, I'll share the story that illustrates the importance of the idea of looking where you want to go, right? So when a very long time ago, one of my early sports in my early 20s was I used to race cars. And when I was learning how to control a skid, one of the things that they talk about is you always want to point your eyes in the direction of where you want to go versus where you don't want to go, right? So literally looking at where the direction you want to go in versus the direction you don't want to go in. And it's kind of what we're talking about here with our thoughts of how do I make my thoughts line up and look in the direction of where I want to go versus keeping my head directed in the direction of where I don't want to go. So when you're trying to control a skid, if you're looking at the car that you're about to crash into, you're more likely to move your car in that direction of where your eyes are. So you want to make sure, like, it doesn't matter what this thing is over here that you're potentially going to crash into. You want to direct your eyes over to the thing that you want, the road that you're trying to go on. So it's the same thing here. It's the same thing with your thoughts. It's that idea of like looking where you want to go versus where you don't want to go. So my challenge to you guys is like, how can you flip the what ifs, right? So how can you flip those around? And so instead of thinking about, well, what if this happens and what if that happens in the negative way, right? In the fear-based way, to flip it in a way that's like, oh, well, what if I can come back stronger? And what if I can actually even do something more than I thought I could do before? So looking at it's so often that the what ifs are negative, right? So the what ifs are like, some of the ones I hear in general with injury are like, what if I don't come back and in the same competitive way that I was before I was injured? What if I what if I get injured again, right? That's kind of the big one that a lot of people struggle with. So the what ifs tend to be focused around those fears and the anxieties. But what if we flip it, and what if we look at the things like, and this is a practice that you can do in all life, right? Like that you can really use different ways where you catch yourself being worried about something and feeding that negative what if and see if you can flip it around. Like, well, what's the opposite? Like if you're feeding the fear, what would it look like to feed the desire instead? And really, when you catch yourself in this space of, let's say it's, you're concerned about a setback during rehabilitation, or you're concerned about a specific exercise that is new in your rehab that your athletic trainer wants you to do. So looking at one of those, and when you feel the fear inside of what that what if is, to go to see if you can shift it to something that you want versus something that you don't want. And sometimes it's okay to identify the things you don't want in order to get, as long as you get to the things that you do want. And then when you get to that place of like, well, what is the thing I actually want? Then can you not just tap into what that looks like and what that is, but also tap into what it feels like. What does it feel like in my body and in my sort of emotional state when I come from that place of desire versus fear, and really like let yourself feel that. So Cindy says, let's see, my what ifs right now after coming back from injury, but not being quite up to my previous level of performance. Yeah. What if I'm never able to run as fast as I used to? So how can I flip that? That's a good question. So, so part of it is, what if I can? Right. So it's part of the what if is just opening up that possibility. So instead of getting stuck in the fear and that, which is, you know, when we're in that place, I don't know if you can feel this, Cindy, but it's almost like when you have that kind of what if I'm never able to run as fast as I used to? There's almost like a tension and a bracing that comes with that kind of what if, because the motivation is fear. And then when you do things to help potentially prevent that, right? So when you're training and you're doing things in service of trying to get back to running as fast as you can, it's almost done in a, you know, I don't know if this is happening for you, but what can happen is like it's done in a way that feels sort of forced and desperate versus in a place where it feels like almost like a gift and excitement of like, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do this, but let's go find out. So to kind of be open to that possibility. So flipping the what if would be like, what if I can come back and feel just as strong? So, you know, instead of making the negative assumption, you know, you can flip it and make the positive assumption. And really, a lot of times you're somewhere in between, but it's going to feel different. Your forward movement towards that is going to feel a lot different when it's coming from that place of sort of the positive motivation versus the negative motivation. So that's one way to flip it, is so to look at what you want versus what you don't want. And maybe right now in this moment, that means, you know, maybe the what if is just focusing on something that's happening in this moment instead of sort of fear of the future. Like, well, you know, that kind of comes back to the idea of controlling the controllables. Well, what is it? What's in my control right now? And what if I just focused on that? Right? That's another way to kind of direct the what ifs. Like, well, what if I allowed myself to feel confident? What would that feel like? That's another kind of way to flip it, to flip this idea of the negative what if. What if I didn't feed the monster today, just to see what that feels like? What if just for the next hour, I felt like what if for the next hour I believed that I'm absolutely going to run as fast as I did before, right? So it's just playing with this idea, because we use that so often, the like, and maybe sometimes not consciously, but it's very common that we're thinking in those what if terms, so to speak. So to just catch yourself and see if you can play with it and like poke holes in the theories that you're creating in your mind, because that just will open things up a little bit. So really thinking about that idea of like looking where you want versus where you don't want. So I actually just there's a homework exercise with one of my clients that it's kind of like a finish the sentence. So to give yourself sort of a script to start playing with this, like, how can I shift my focus, and how that's connected to how you feel, right? So playing with this idea of flipping the what ifs and flipping the script is one way to do it. Another way to do it is, I call it feel focus. So it's you can finish the sentence to play with this like idea of like, well, where I'm choosing to focus is affecting how I feel, and how, you know, and kind of assessing yourself in that way. So when you catch yourself in a certain feeling state, so say you're feeling anxious or you're feeling worried, or, you know, whatever the feeling is, you're in that moment, you catch yourself and go, okay, so right now I'm feeling blank. So you just label the feeling. So right now I'm feeling nervous. I'm feeling apprehensive. I'm feeling excited. I'm feeling scared, whatever that feeling is. I am feeling blank. That's the first sentence. And then the next sentence you're finishing is because I am focused on blank, right? So I am feeling nervous because I am focused on the possibility that I might not run as fast as I can in the future, right? So you're filling in the blanks. So I am feeling blank because I am focused on blank. I want to feel whatever the emotional state that you would prefer, right? So I want to feel calm or confident or excited or whatever it is that you would like to feel, hopeful. I want to feel hopeful, so I will choose to focus on what, right? So what is it that you need? How do you need to shift your focus in order to achieve the feeling state that you're going for? So sometimes just having like the formula to talk through of like, I'm feeling blank because I'm focused on blank. I want to feel blank, so I will choose to focus on blank, right? Just helps you like have like a formula to help see where the shift needs to happen. So let's see. So Cindy says, I love that. So helpful. Yes. Yeah, very much. It's also the idea of curiosity. Like instead of being sad about what might not happen, be curious about what can be possible. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's yeah, I love that. I've been playing with that word a lot, curiosity. I think that's a good way to go. So I see people kind of popping in and out, and so if anybody's jumping in and has any burning questions right now as you think about, where you're at with your injury, anything that's on your mind, anything you're struggling with. So go ahead and type your comments in the comment box on the live Q&A here, and we'll definitely, that's always our priority, is to answer questions that you have that are your burning questions as they come up. So if you jump in, ask away. Go ahead and type in there and ask your questions. I think as I was talking there, the other idea that sort of sparked with this like feeling focused idea, something that I see people struggle with, and maybe I don't know why I'm feeling compelled to say this right now, but so maybe it's going to resonate with someone out there that's going to watch this. Maybe somehow I think that one of the things that can be really important to let go of for some of you guys out there that are dealing with an injury. And this might be a specific type of injury, but like really letting go of any blame or shame if that blame and shame is directed at yourself. So for anyone out there that's feeling like maybe the what-ifs are revolved around things you feel like you should have done differently to prevent your injury. And I see this sometimes, well, I see it with acute injuries, but also sometimes with chronic injuries, people feeling like that somehow they should have been able to prevent it and that it's their fault. And there's a lot of sort of guilt and shame and blame that happens around that. And so, and the reason I think this is coming up for me right now with this idea of feeling focused and shifting is that can really keep you stuck. It's almost like sometimes when you get stuck in that like shame and blame and guilt, and feeling like there's something you could have done differently that would mean that you were not in the position you're in right now with being injured. It can prevent you from doing what you need to do in order to get healthy right now. It's almost like for some people when they get stuck there, it's almost like they feel like it's almost a way of like punishing yourself for it's like, yeah. And it's not, I mean, again, this is not something that people are consciously doing, but it's, just to like, if you find yourself in that specific feeling state of blaming yourself for like, oh my God, I can't believe I did this. I can't believe, I pushed it hard. I know better. That doesn't matter right now. That doesn't matter, right? You're investing energy in the past and there's nothing you really think about. Okay. That's when maybe you do the feeling focused template. And how can you let that go? Because it's not serving you at all. And you don't deserve to stay stuck in that place. So really find a way to let that go. Yeah. So any, as you jump in here again, make sure you ask any burning questions that you have. So if you've got any questions that are on your mind right now as you're in your recovery, anything you're struggling with, anything that you're concerned about, any highlights you want to share, I loved seeing all the, yeah, I think it was maybe it was last week. It must have been while I was in Toronto. There was some really fun milestones that people were sharing, and that's such a big deal. That was one of the I can't remember what workshop it was. It wasn't related to injury, but it was related to other aspects of sports psychology and performance enhancement, and the importance of celebrating those milestones and how that really feeds your confidence. That you're not just celebrating when you get to the top of the mountain, but you're also celebrating like each step along the way. Oh, hello. Hi, how are you? Marieva, I hope I'm saying that right. It's possible that I'm totally botching your name, so you'll have to say in the comments how to pronounce your name. So I feel very identified with what you're saying. I keep going back in my head to that class where I was injured, and afterwards, yes, right? Yeah, I know. No, it's great to see you. No worries, for showing up when you're able to get here. Yeah, that's such a great description. I might steal that from you. That it is absolutely like purgatory, and that you are. It's just like I will see that with a lot of athletes, just keeping themselves in that place where I need to just continue to punish myself instead of like, no, you don't. And it's okay to, I really feel like one of the most important things that you can cultivate through this process is self-compassion, right? And showing yourself the kindness that you might show to someone else. So if you imagine for a moment, like, somebody else in that same position. So if you imagine that it was somebody else that was in that class and is questioning, right? So it's like you're a teammate, you're your best friend, somebody that you respect and admire and love, that is saying, and that person is like, how could I have done this? I can't believe this. I'm such an idiot. I should have stopped earlier. That there's no way that you would say, yeah, you should probably keep punishing yourself about that, and maybe stay in purgatory for at least another 6 months. We would never do that to anyone else. So we need to cultivate that same kind of compassion towards ourselves, right? Of like, oh no, that person doesn't deserve to stay in purgatory, and neither do you. So it's this idea of like self-compassion and forgiveness, right? And recognition that you're human, and you did in the moment what you thought you were capable of doing. And of course, had you known what was going to happen, you would have stopped, but we don't know, right? Sometimes we don't know. And maybe you take that and that experience. And one of the things, a lot of people talk about, one of the things that they gain from going through, coming back from injury, is a greater understanding of their body, and also a greater sort of respect for it, and a greater ability to listen when it's talking to you, right? But sometimes there's certain things that it's going to happen. When you push your body to the limit, sometimes you find out what that limit is. And sometimes that can be prevented, and sometimes it can't. So, that's something I've been reading about a lot lately. And one of the workshops I thought was really interesting around injury is playing with this whole idea of the greater culture around athletics, and the fact that the culture that's there's almost this respect and kind of romanticized idea of what it means to push through pain, and that means that's kind of connected to mental toughness, and that maybe that's not the best way to approach the idea of optimal performance, because our bodies do have limits, and our bodies do need recovery in order for us to have optimal performance. So really embracing this idea of your training, right? Like your physical training and your workouts and the things that you need to do in order to be competitive when you go out are just as important as the recovery pieces, and almost seeing those as part of your training plan. And sometimes, it's tough that sometimes and I include myself in this, absolutely, that sometimes we don't learn those lessons until we get injured. We don't learn how important that is until we get injured, or until we study it some more and understand it more, or until we get older in our athletic life and realize, like, oh, look at that. If, I actually need more recovery in order to perform to the same level that I did before. Like, it's such an interesting thing to kind of wrap your head around as an athlete. So you find self-compassion the hardest thing to do with yourself, but keep trying. That's good. That's good that you keep trying, right? Maybe I should do a whole webinar on self-compassion by itself, because I really think that, like, so many of us will end up kind of sabotaging ourselves because of that challenge of, like, just, that piece alone. So I see other people jumping in and out. Definitely, we've got, a couple more minutes here. So if anyone has any burning questions, definitely put them in the comments there. That went really fast. But I can't tell you how much I enjoy, like, being able to address the things that are specifically on your mind in this moment. I mean, I know, like, if I kind of have different topics, I know that there are definitely going to be people, like some of you guys that are watching the recording, that there's certain things I'll touch on that are going to resonate with you. They might not resonate with everyone, depending on where you're at. Everyone's injury journey is unique, and everyone is in a different place in their recovery. But I know, I've worked with enough injured athletes to know, like, these are some of the things that you'll come up against, or that many people come up against. So I think, but I really love answering your specific questions. So we're going to put our heads together and see, make sure there's really great ways to be able to do that, in a way that works for you guys, right? Whether it's the live Q&A, or maybe we do, shorter videos and address people's specific questions. So we're going to come up with some creative ways to do that. But yeah, it's been a pleasure, the October live Q&A. We will see you in November. I can't remember the date, but you will see it on the Injured Athletes Club. We'll put that out there for you guys. Yeah, and keep coming back and keep getting support and keep supporting others, man, because that's, even if you're in a different place in your injury, and I know sometimes it's like, I don't want to think about injury anymore, I'm off and running, but that there's people back here that, would love to hear from you too, and get that support as people are commenting in here. So happy fall again. And we will, if there's any, I want to double check one more time. No last burning questions. Okay. We're going to wrap it up. And so remember to focus on what you want versus what you don't want. Remember to try and flip the script, right? So flip those what ifs. So if you're having a negative what if, see if you can flip it somehow, and flip it to something more positive, right? Whether it's that idea of looking at what you want versus what you don't want, or just flipping it in a way it's like, what if I wasn't worried about this? How would that feel, right? So really kind of like seeing what it feels like to tap into the motivation of desire versus staying stuck in the motivation of fear, and really feel that difference, because it's a big difference when you can start to feel that in a moment when you're like recognizing, I'm focused right now on something I don't want. So the don't want, like Cindy's example, what if I don't come back? And what if I'm not able to run as fast as I did before? So trying, when you're in one of those moments and you recognize, oh, that's a don't want versus a do want, right? What would it feel like if I close my eyes and imagine myself back running as fast as I can, and running just as fast as before the injury, and actually see if you can feel what that feels like in your body, and start playing with that feeling state, because it's very, very impactful. You can see that you can just play with that idea right now, like the way that you feel when you're confident is very different than the way that you feel when you're anxious, right? And then play with that feel focus, right? So play with that structure and that script, in order to start seeing what it's like to shift your focus in order to shift your emotional state and play with that connection. So it's, I'm feeling blank because I am focused on blank. I want to feel blank, so I will choose to focus on blank. Maybe I'll put that, we'll put that in, I'll put the little, that structure in the comments there so you guys can see what that looks like written out. All right, awesome. Oh, let's see. I've got more comments. Hi. Yeah, it's Richard. Hey, hello. Awesome. Oh, my pleasure. We're just wrapping up. You did just catch the last few seconds, but hopefully you can watch the whole thing and see if there's anything in there that you can connect with. Oh, my pleasure. Yes. Right? Yes. There you go. You guys can go. Now you'll be watching it at the same time from the beginning. But I'm glad you guys could join in. It's always great to have you guys. Keep, supporting each other in the live Q&A, or in the IAC. I call it the IAC, the Injured Athletes Club, in the Facebook, and hopefully we'll catch you guys on the next live Q&A. Have a great rest of my favorite holidays coming up. I love Halloween. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your October, and we'll see you in November. Bye, everyone.